This is a presentation on innovation process management, which a lot of people don't understand. What is that? Why do I need that? And I've been able to pull away some commonalities on how to drive new things to market and what really is needed for that. So first off, let's define what innovation is, right? Innovation is a process of systematically de-risking ideas to deliver value to customers. And I try to keep this very, very simple and without using a lot of jargon because first off, it's a process, which means it can be repeated, it can be improved, you can implement it. It's not magic, it's not voodoo, it's not a mystical thing. It's de-risking ideas because generally we live in a world where we're drowning in a lot of ideas and to deliver value to customers, right? Because these are kind of three things that you need to actually create something new to the market that's people are gonna find value and pay you money for. So the first thing about innovation is you have to be in an organization where someone wants to do it. I know this sounds really dumb, right? But like this is John F. Kennedy. We choose to go to the moon. You know, this is the absolute and ultimate version of setting ambition, right? We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard, as he would say. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills, because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win. This is perfect setting ambition, right? And this was such audacious and imaginative that we actually went to the moon 10 years later. Okay, this is what a lot of people think of as innovation, and it is like the ultimate form of innovation that we can do. But I do challenge you that there are other ways to set innovation. I say we choose to put the garbage cans every 30 feet, right? This is the classic story of Walt Disney. What did he do? He bought a hot dog. When he was done eating it, and he had to throw the wrappers away, he said, I want a trash can there, which was every 30 feet. That's a sort of apocryphal story. The real story is they took away a lot of the trash cans on Main Street, and one time as an experiment to see where the trash built up, and then they knew where to really place the trash cans, right? That's a different level of innovation. That's setting the ambition, but maybe this is the best thing for your organization right now. And I said, these are both innovation, but like you need to set the ambition correctly for what's legit, right? And a lot of people don't even do that. They just kind of, you know, here's an idea and there's an idea and maybe we could do that and maybe this is cool, and they don't actively say what we want to do as an organization. So the next big problem I see is there's this conflation of invention versus innovation, right? So Thomas Edison is the poster child of invention, where he goes off into his private R&D lab and he tries to create new things, new to the world, new to the people, new to humanity, right? This is very trial and error. This is sort of individual genius. And I want to say that I think that the real innovation is more aligned with Taiichi Ohno. So Taiichi Ohno was this guy from Toyota. And if you've ever heard of like the Toyota production system or lean product development, it all comes from this guy because he had to run the Toyota factories, right? This was not sitting there trying to invent the light bulb. This was, I need to make Toyotas better and faster and cheaper, right? And then the Western sort of analysts came up with all this jargon around lean production and lean product development with all that. But really, his methodologies are more important for driving actual innovation. So I say, like, let's look at this concept of lean for innovation. And you'll probably say, yeah, but what does a car factory have to do with me trying to drive an innovation program? I'm going to try to set this up now. We have a foundation for innovation and a process, and you'll see how this layers up. Well, first thing we're going to look at is the concept of waste, 7 wastes, which comes directly out of Toyota, then 5 whys, and then tact time, and then this notion of a chief engineer. And these are going to be the foundations for a good innovation program, right? So the 7 wastes are, you know, number 1, delay, queuing, 2, overproduction, 3, overprocessing, 4, transportation, 5, unnecessary movement, 6, inventory, and 7, defects. Now, obviously, this comes out of manufacturing, but I mean, you could apply these to anything in life, right? Like, I've applied these to my kitchen. I've applied these to my sock drawer, actually. Once you get into this methodology, I've actually had the opportunity to be in factory settings that are actually doing lean, and it's literally like, I need to move this bottle more efficiently, and if I move it 5 centimeters less times 1,000 a day, that's like their innovation. But you can think about this in anything. You can think about this in like healthcare or insurance processing, or you know, where is the waste in your organization? And once you see waste, you start to have to say, well, okay, this looks wasteful to us. Why are we moving this bottle this far to begin with, right? Or this is the classic case that the Toyota guys talk about, why did the robot stop? Well, a circuit overloaded causing the fuse to blow. So you ask why. Well, why did the circuit overload? Well, the bearings locked up, insufficient lubrication. Number 3, well, why was there insufficient lubrication? Well, the oil pump wasn't circulating enough. Why? Why? Because the pump intake was clogged. Why? Because there was no filter on the pump. So if you keep asking why 5 times, you'll generally get to the meaningful levels where you can actually enact change to make it change in the long run, right? Now, takt time is this notion of capacity. Let her roll. I love that. And again, when you're thinking about a car factory, it's very easy to say, okay, we want a Toyota rolling off the line every minute, and you have to start to back up that you need everything in that factory flowing at a rate of 1 car per minute. So the doors, 1 per minute, the steering wheels, 1 per minute, and all the way back to the stampings and the steel mills and then the ore mines need a takt time of 1 Toyota per minute, right? And everything needs to flow smoothly and be balanced. And what happens is in a lot of companies, when you're trying to do innovation, because the work is invisible, a lot of the sort of white-collar processes, as they're called, like you can't see if one organization is working way too fast and one group is working way too slowly, or where the bottlenecks are, right? So your product development becomes this. Like, it's like some people are choking on too much ideas and too many innovations, and others won't lift a finger, they can't do anything. And then they just they're clueless as to what they're doing. Yeah, I think somewhere she says here, great line. Yeah. Well, so, have you ever been in a company where innovation kind of looks like this, where people are like scurrying around and scrambling? That's why I put this up there. But I also like this one, where if you imagine, so let's say someone creates an idea, someone has to refine the idea, and someone has to implement it. You want that handover to go very smoothly, right? And you think about each of these metronomes as handing work or handing something down the line to the next person. You really want your organization to look like this, right? You have to get the takt time right on this stuff. So the way you think about this is we can produce a new blank per blank, right? So we can produce a new product per quarter, like maybe you're introducing new things to the world. Or we can produce a new process per week. Or we can produce a new ad per day if you're a marketing agency, right? So I actually ran marketing for a 25 million revenue mom and pop operation. And they really were very old-fashioned. They were able to produce like swag, and that's what they thought of marketing. I said, no, we really need to think of marketing as a factory for marketing content. And just like the factory was producing things and you're trying to make it more efficient, we have to make marketing more efficient. And we said, well, we can produce a new case study per month, right? Because we had a backlog of case studies. We could have produced maybe more, but that was okay. A social media post per 2 weeks. Well, they were wondering, why can't we do 1 per day? And I said, well, that's a lot. And then we all kind of settled on, well, every 2 weeks would be good enough. And 1 campaign per quarter, thought leadership per quarter, and all that. And when I showed this diagram to the CEO, it really clicked in his mind that it's a factory for marketing, right? And then the next step that I didn't even highlight here, because I think everybody in this industry knows standardized production because it's such a routine world we live in. Okay, you want to do this, so we know that everything needs copywriting, graphics, photo editing, digital distribution, right? So everything. So I have to make sure that this capacity is matched with this capacity, and then it will start to flow smoothly through it. This needs to be augmented with planning, brand management, tools, and event management, right? And that was the way to kind of make the invisible visible and people understand what's our capacity, what are we trying to flow through the system. The next thing that really set a foundation for good innovation is this notion of Toyota chief engineer. So at Toyota, there's literally one person will own a whole car development for 3 to 4 years. So like your new Toyota Tacoma, one person oversaw that whole development in terms of what all of the customer demand requirements will be, what the technology choices are, the platform choices. That's a lot of power for one person. But I say that this is really important in innovation. What I've seen is that you need a single accountable leader for whatever you define as your innovation to drive it from concept to launch, right? And the reason for that is that these people generally do these these things that are like big organizations are very bad at, fast decisions, silo breaking, focusing on the customer, yet maintaining business objectives and technical depth. That's a very hard thing for multiple people to do. It's very easy for one person to keep kind of in their mind. And they really act as the catalyst for action, right? That's what's so important in these organizations. So again, think about this now. So you're looking around your organization, you're starting to see, that's kind of wasteful, and maybe we could do that better, and I have this idea for this better product. And you're starting to ask, well, why? Why is this wasteful? Why are we doing it this way? And then you're starting to say, okay, well, I've identified like 10 things we want to do, but really we have capacity to do like one thing per month that we could really fix. And we're going to assign this, crackerjack person that really wants to do this to make sure it gets done. So you can start to see this foundation is like right away, this is a lot more secure than most companies operate when they try to do new things. Now we're going to give this team some tools. This is design thinking. You might have heard that process. This is this classic diagram called the double diamond, where you have discover the problem, define the problem, develop the solution, and deliver the solution, right? And what it really looks like is you have some general challenge of something needs to be better. Okay, so then you say, well, why does it need to be better? You ask the 5 whys. Then you have to say, okay, well, we have like all these reasons why something is not working right. You want to say, okay, we came up with 10 ideas to solve this problem, and we think number 3 is the best winner. Then we're going to say, okay, well, that's the idea. So then how do we actually come up with a solution for this, and then how do we deliver that, right? So it's always like these two different mindsets of, in life, you kind of have people who are trained in design, whether that's architecture, interiors, or graphic design, and all that, generally are taught how to open up possible solutions and open up ideas. And the analytical mindsets like engineering and business and accounting always look at all these issues and want to whittle it down to one perfect solution, right? Both are valid, but they're different, right? So you need the mindset of opening up ideas, and then you need the mindset of solving towards one singular solution, right? You can't have one or the other. They fall apart. The next tool set you need for innovation is rapid prototyping. And right, the value of rapid prototyping, because we're at IAAPA, I could pull this image out. This is Walt Disney shortly before he died in the aerodynamics parking lot doing a test that they built of Pirates of the Caribbean, right? They wanted to see how the drop would work, how the lift would work. So, it's really, this is, in modern day money, this is prototyping to the tunes of millions of dollars, but to avoid hundreds of millions of dollars in mistakes later on. So most people can't do this, but still, this is really valid. So I also want you to think there's so many ways to treat prototypes. I can't address them all, but like in the architecture world, architects start with like crude pieces of cardboard and paper scraps to like model their spaces before they're doing their $300 million concert hall or whatever. And they make these models that they'll rip apart and they'll throw together and they'll hand to the customer because it's very powerful. Another way that's very interesting is the Mechanical Turk solution. So the Mechanical Turk was this automaton in the old days, right, where somebody would, they were playing chess and they thought they were playing chess against a robot, but they weren't really, because there was a chess master hiding inside the cabinet actually playing chess. But the reason this is really interesting is because if nowadays so much is like UX and UI, digital experiences, and there might be a lot of opportunities where you could very quickly and cheaply, particularly with AI now turbocharging everything, mock up an experience and then have behind the scenes a human being doing the real work or connecting it to your old antiquated systems. And you could do that for a few days or weeks or whatever it needs. So you can test, hey, this really works. Now we have a good business case. Now we'll spend the money to actually make the infrastructure for that to work. And then concept videos. So if you know Dropbox very famously in 2008 had this 2-minute concept video is how they got all the funding and they launched Dropbox, like multi-billion-dollar company nowadays, because it was just too hard to understand. People didn't get this notion of you put it in a folder and it syncs to all your devices, so they made a video. And nowadays videos are so easy that there's going to be a lot of opportunities where if you need to convince senior leadership, it might be easier for you to kind of make and hack together a video and edit it a little bit and then share that so they can see it, right? So rapid prototyping oftentimes certain people don't like this, and they don't like it because they view it as wasteful somehow, or it's like extravagant. They just want to like take the engineering mindset of give me the spec, I'm going to design against it, right? And they don't understand that to define the spec, you need to open it up. So I say there's the Rumsfeld matrix. If you're familiar with American politics, this was the guy who did the second Iraq war based on wrong information, right, infamously. But he had this thing where it's the level of awareness and the level of understanding. So there's the known knowns, right? The things we are aware of and the things we understand. This is science. This is all the stuff you can guess. There's also the known unknowns, right? Like we understand there's a missing piece of this that has to be designed or engineered yet or whatever determined, right? We know, but that will come soon. Then there's the unknown unknowns. You know, there's a terrorist attack, asteroid's going to hit the planet. We just, you know, nobody can foresee this or whatever. And like you're caught blind by that because you don't know. There's also the unknown knowns, which is sort of like the blind spots in a car. Like you don't know what's there, but you can only like do so much to know that. There's a lot of kind of willful ignorance down in this area too, if you really get into it. And what prototyping does is it throws knowledge and visibility across this whole board. And now, if you're trying to do a pet project and you only want to hear good things that everybody knows, you don't necessarily like prototyping. It might expose flaws in your thinking, right? Or if you're a CEO and you have your whatever and you want it to happen, you might not want to know, ooh, all the dark, scary stuff lurking down here that you're prototyping exposed, right? So that's the dark side of prototyping. Okay, so you see we're starting to build this board. We sort of have the foundation. We're giving them some key tools here, double diamond, the prototyping. Now let's talk about the process. So really what you're doing is you're pulling together all of this great information, right? You're looking at your revenue numbers or whatever you're looking, you know, open innovation, ideas, stakeholders, you know, the chairman of the board had an idea from his daughter and he had to, you know, give it to someone. It's all data points that are all valid. Like nobody's ideas are ever wrong. They might not be relevant or might not be appropriate, but you want to collect it and organize it and somehow keep it. And then the next thing is you want to do that sort of double diamond prototyping. You want to go around the circle for a bit and you want to hash through this stuff and you want to make some quick generations, right? And then I found over and over again that people, if it's not from their own mind, they don't embrace it, the not invented here syndrome. So even well-intentioned managers still need to be convinced, right? And this is where sexy demos really come into play. Now, the auto industry does this brilliantly with concept cars, that they will build some outrageous concept car, will be on the turntable at the auto shows, will get all the pictures. What they're really doing is market research. They want to see, how does the market, do they all want it? Is this like the most gorgeous thing? Is this like, or is people rejecting it and they don't want it? And then from there, you can start to say, these start to feel very real. And this will get a lot of people to talk about, well, this is going to cost us this much, and this is a business case, and you know, we really think we're going to get revenue. So you can start to put a business case on these things. And then the next leap is sort of where the executives can actually step in on the roadmaps or whatever you want and say, okay, for strategic reasons, we really want to do this one first and this one second, and that one we don't want to do, right? Then you move into where a lot of people start, right? Then you move into product development where it could be either agile or the traditional waterfall, right? And if you think about a lot of organizations, they just start with like someone makes a spec out of thin air because they kind of think they know what they're doing and they haven't really vetted anything, and they hand it off to here. Then you expend all these resources, then you have to go into the product launch, you have to do sales training and marketing or whatever it is, money, 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 money. It's very, very expensive, and they never really vetted it, right? And then they're surprised when it fails or it flops in the market, right? So you really want to put a little more effort in on the front end because it's really cheap. It's really, really cheap to prototype. It's really, really expensive to have a failed product that you did all the way out to market launch, right? So making it work. You got to have the right people on the team for innovation, right? So like I said, there's people who are very generative, they open up ideas, and there's people who are very analytical, that they want to close ideas down to like find the perfect solution, right? And both are very good and valid. But I also found that you have like optimistic people and pessimistic people, right? And you have to think about this, that there's just people in life who are, you know, but they're still good, hardworking, valid people. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. So I kind of thought about this more. So this is the creative phase. This is the Disney Imagineers in their blue sky and everything goes, and you know, I have the offsite, we have no limits. That's great, you need that. That's the fun thing, though. But you also have optimistic analysts. These are called like researchers. These are the folks that are going to dive into data and find trends that you never imagined, and like look at like real like customer surveys, and like, you know, they're going to be analytical, but they're going to go in with a positive attitude. You also have generative pessimists. Why would you want that? Well, are you building a roller coaster? You want somebody to think through every possible failure mode before you build this sucker? They're great for that. Failure mode analysis, right? FMEA, like there's a lot of businesses where you can't fail fast because you'll kill someone. So you really need an innovation team that has that sort of, the sky is falling, but here's how we solve it. We can get through this. And then unfortunately though, there's kind of pessimistic analysts. And to me, this is where most businesses are overrun with this. Any sort of established, mature business has to be defensive. They have to be very incremental. They have to defend commodity hard scratched out models. For innovation projects though, they're really not helpful. This is like, you don't want people who are analytical and negative, because they just can't ever seem to get over like, this is something new, there's risk associated here, but that's good, that's okay, right? You want them running the steady state business. You don't want them trying to do the new things. So you see the game board here, right? We built up. You're looking for waste, you're asking why, you figured out kind of the capacity, you got catalysts, they're using double diamond, they're prototyping, they're pulling together teams of people, and they're doing this process, right? So now I'm going to go into the fun stuff, right? These are the hard-won lessons that most people don't share when they want to tell you that innovation is all happy, happy. Okay, so the first one is optics, okay? So Taiichi Ohno, eliminating waste, producing Toyotas smoothly and efficiently, that's great, really good, right? Edison, finding new value, inventing new things, that's great, that's good. These are both good things, right? They're both good for your company, but finding new things is Schwarzenegger, and eliminating waste is sort of Danny DeVito in terms of like your career, that a lot of managers don't want to invest time and money into eliminating waste. They just kind of want to think that they're perfect and their operations are going great, and they don't want to deal with that. And they all want the sexy new things, right? So another thing, resources. I dealt with this a lot at places like Philips and these big corporations, right? The manager says, you'll share resources from other teams to do your innovation project, right? Now, just think for a second, does your team have like people sitting around waiting to help other teams in your company do their fancy innovation projects? No, nobody has extra capacity because work expands to fill the space allotted to it. There's no capacity. So this was an actual board I made to set up a product development team, right? I kind of said like, we need to do this process on the front end. We also need to do concept design, product spec, program management, product marketing, sales. I need this under me. Like, I need the budget, I need the headcount, I control this, right? I need that, because we also have to have these interfaces with the management team, the sales team, engineering and marketing. And if I need any of this done by them, I'm begging and pleading and hoping and wishing for their contributions to this. And you know what that does when times get tough? Mine is dead, not theirs. Right. So you have to acknowledge you have to have the capacity, and these teams have to acknowledge that they have to have the capacity to interface with the product team or the innovation team or whatever it is. And if they're simply too stubborn or not equipped to do that, you have a higher level organization problem, but you've got to plan for this. Okay, another thing where innovation goes to die, what I call fairy tales, right? I have seen over and over again that you get these executives or leaders or whoever, they don't want to admit how hard life is. They want to stick their head in the sand. They're just overwhelmed. They just want to view innovation as this fantasy that's going to solve all their problems, and they don't want to think about real things like budgets, costs, schedules, results. Okay, here's the real hard thing, right? You want to do an innovation project, challenge the people above you, say, okay, you're going to give me this much money times this much time, and you expect this much revenue out of me. And I will bet you more often than not, they won't want to admit to this, or they'll give you ludicrous numbers, or they'll give you some sort of little money and a little time, some outrageous revenue expectations. I was literally given at Philips a $1.2 million budget in 1 year, and they wanted like me to be heading towards $100 million in revenue. And this guy was serious. Like, he wasn't willing to back down from that number. He was so clueless as a manager, right? And there's just, you got to make it real. And this is hard. This means accountability. This means executives putting their necks out and finding real money. And they don't want to do that. They just want to say, I'm launching this sexy new innovation, aren't I cool? And like, kind of forget that you got to actually do it. Time, this was another thing. You're actually get to the point of you've got an innovation going, you have a time bomb, a ticking time bomb waiting for you, right? And it's called the corporate ladder in most places, right? If she's your boss, you got 2 to 3 years to make her look good before she moves on to her next role, because the next guy who comes in is cutting your program because that will make him look good, right? If he didn't invent it, if he didn't start the innovation, he can't take credit for it, he's going to cut you. So you have to be really, really sensitive to being aligned to that kind of who are the corporate climbers, who's moving around. And then there's momentum. And this is a little tricky for me because I know it's really important, but it's hard to define. So here's another John F. Kennedy quote, very shrewd guy. Success has many friends, failure is an orphan, right? And when you get an innovation program that starts having some money flowing, oh, everybody loves you. It's happy, happy. Everybody wants to own you. They want you in their division. They want to claim credit for you. When you're in the innovation that has no revenue, your carcass is dead and gone, right? So all I can say is that when you are going to start any sort of innovation, you better have a very clear path in your mind between my idea and how I get revenue going fast. And if you don't have a very clear path to revenue, you probably want to rethink where you're at in your innovation, or if you want to stake your career at it, or if you want to do an entrepreneurial role or something like that. Because revenue absolves all sins. And I saw some corporate ventures that had really kind of flighty ideas, but because the person who started this corporate venture was able to get revenue quickly, he was able to kind of hold that up for like 2 years to buy him time, or her time, right? It's amazing how psychologically powerful showing I made real money does to buy you all sorts of cover, right? So, show me the money. You got to get it going. But I think there's a little more than that for momentum. You have to have relevance, novelty, and resources if you're really going to be doing, particularly in big corporations. Is this a problem the organization actually cares about? If you're off doing some flighty thing that's like the cool future technology, but the organization, is a coal mine, they're probably not going to care. Are you unique in solving it? Or are there other groups trying to solve the same thing, fighting for the same resources, and it's like a horse race? That's a bad situation. And then research, you have actual budget. Did you get real money assigned to you? Or is these like hopes and dreams kind of attached to you that you're trying to work with fairy tales? And then, as Tom says, show me the money. Okay. Just one thing too, if you're in really big companies, there's this cottage industry around innovation, like particularly all the lean stuff is just loaded with Japanese words as jargon, and there's just trademark systems and all this. And I've seen like some places have more people trying to manage and measure innovation than actually trying to do innovation, right? And you'll see this very quickly that this consultants and innovation world and all this will throw all these metrics on there, but it just strangles anybody actually trying to do some fragile little idea and move through all of this bureaucracy. But if you're running a business or a small business, just kind of keep mentally, are you collecting ideas and recording them so they don't just kind of fly off into the ether? Are you putting a little money behind some of them, right? And are you really getting any revenue from that? And you might have one hit, one mediocre, you might have to cut it on, one that's dead. That's fine. That's the basic metrics that if you're running any sort of innovation or company, you want to kind of keep track of. But I will say, for your own personal safety, if you're in a career and you want to be on innovation and you start to smell any of these things going wrong, you got to be very, very careful, because it doesn't end well for a lot of people on the innovation track in big companies. Okay, so kind of wrap this up, this part of the presentation at least. I'll say, it's not enough for someone to have an idea in the shower and then come running in and say, oh yeah, I got this great, we got to do it now. This often happens with founders. I've worked for 8 different company founders now, and they're always driven by ideas and the new thing and pitching ideas, and they love that. But it's very disruptive to a young organization when you have some founder coming in and every day he's changing the targets or the goals or he's creating something new, right? Or for a team manager in a bigger corporation. So when innovation is done right, this was just another slide, it's not really relevant, but it's like every team in a company can be thinking this way, right? I mean, your quality management team can be better at how they do their things or, installation, whatever. Every single group in the company can be innovative. If you have an innovation team or an innovation manager in your company, that's generally a signal that the rest of your company is not healthy, right? So you really don't want a dedicated innovation. What I was thinking about here is that we could do this exercise where I kind of set up this game board, and I was thinking, this is IAAPA. Well, we all know ODVs. Even if you've never been in it, you can kind of make an assumption. So let's say, for example, you're an area manager and you're new, you're 20-something, it's your first time managing, and you know that your revenues are kind of flat or down, but your lines are long. So how would you go about solving this? And I think you guys, take this, and like I said, I'll send you all the slides, you can have this, and, just keep this in mind, like when you're looking at these things, like how would I approach this? Well, why is it long? Well, maybe we have the tyranny of choice. We put too many choices, it takes too long for them to decide, it's slowing everything down. Or maybe it's because we don't have enough capacity, or maybe it's whatever. You can think through, like, what are the wastes? Why is there waste here? There's clearly waste. We have queues, we're not moving it fast enough. Why? And then, like, as you're the area manager, you might have 10 other problems in your area. Well, how many, can you solve one per week or one per month or whatever, right? And then prototyping, in this situation might just be like, well, maybe we'll just shift something around so the workers have less movement or something, and we'll just try this for a week, right? It doesn't, you don't have to rebuild the cart, right? Okay, so corporate venture. So I was at Philips Lighting. If you're not familiar, Philips Lighting is a big global lighting company, architectural lighting and all those. Before Philips disintegrated as a conglomerate, had a really good innovation management program. So they had this corporate innovation board where if you had an idea, you could make a crude internal pitch and the innovation board would say, hey, we think this has some validity, we're going to give you a little bit of money, make some prototypes, test this, right? So at least Philips was organized enough to have that as a process. Most of the time it was folks from Philips research or engineers or technical specialties who came with like some awesome technology, they had no idea what to do with it. I came with it from a design background. So I actually was looking at the kind of evolution of LED lighting and I said, I think there's this opportunity to integrate LED lighting into wall surfaces. Remember, this was 2012, so LEDs are all still a novelty. These are all novel ideas. Now you see this everywhere, right? So I was able to make these sketches just on my own for the fun of it. I presented it, and what I did is I made a pitch. All I had was me and my mouth and ideas, so I made this very elaborate pitch that was basically a mood board, but in 91 slides, and I would go through this really fast, almost like a video. Like, this would be maybe a 15-minute pitch to whoever would listen to me in the company, and the corporate team liked it. They gave me a little bit of money. I was able to hire Jan. He was an industrial design student. He wanted the job. We built some prototypes here. I mean, literally duct tape. Like, that's how it was. This is big Philips, Fortune 500, and I'm still have duct tape budget, right? That's what I'm doing. I have interns, and I was joking with him. He's got to put chewing gum on it somewhere so that we could say we did that. This here was a garbage-filled basement under the design building that I knew was there, and I had them clean out all this old machinery so I could just have an empty space. So if I made this deal with Philips Research, I'm like, can you just clean it off? I'll take it with no utilities, not even air conditioning or anything. And they're like, oh, you really want that? Okay. We'll call it storage space. I'm like, great. I'll call it my showroom. Then they gave me a little bit more money. They saw this. I went to Marriott. I had to get a real valid customer. So I went to Marriott's design group. I took one of those prototypes, I took the pitch deck, and I walked out with an order for 10 panels in some conference center in Detroit. So then that was like the innovation board had enough to say, okay, productize it. We're going to give you some money. I put a budget together. I think it was 1.1 or 1.2 million for the first year to build a team, put the things, and trust me, that's not a lot of money in a company like Philips where like about 60% of my money was wasted on overhead. So if you were an independent entrepreneur, I kind of kept track of this. I really had a budget of about $450,000 is what I actually could play with. Everything else was like real estate charges, IT charges, overhead, on and on. I had this factory in the Netherlands that made office fixtures. You know, this stuff, this is literally a Philips fixture. This could very well could have been built here in this factory, right? And this is a serious factory. This is, you know, lean production cells, quality control, top notch. You could eat off the floor. This is so clean. They wanted hundreds of thousands of dollars in like a year and a half to set up my first production run of prototypes. And I said, well, I'm dead. I can't do that. And I'm walking around the factory, and I see this corner where I see Jan and Wilma over here. And I'm like, well, what's this? And like, oh, that's the model shop. If you just need like a couple made, we can do that, or specialty ones. I'm like, well, I only need like 100 built total the first year. Oh, well, just use that. Literally, I had Jan and Wilma. You could see them assembling this. I put them in my marketing video early on because I had nothing to shoot. And then like, this was my first 2 prototypes. So I got to the point where I hired Kenneth, was a Master's of Industrial Design student, and these kids in the Netherlands need to do their thesis, so they're hungry for these jobs. Little did he know he was also going to have to do sales and business development and trade show logistics and all this other crap, because I had him, he was supposed to just do design work. I had him do all the mechanical engineering, the sheet work design. He did everything. He was amazing. And we had to stand here in an internal presentation for like new technologies for the various business groups to do. So we had to put together our little mini trade show complete with, you know, renderings and samples and all that. And I had to stand there. I'd be Mr. Salesperson and like sell and sell and sell. And then for a long time I had budget and we had a headcount freeze. So I could hire no one but interns. So I like literally, this was a kid from Delft's architecture school who wanted to start a video company, so I gave him his first job. He gave me a super cheap price. This was Milu. I hired her to do parametric design for like the computational stuff for this. We also put her in all our marketing videos. You'll see this theme. That's Boss. He was an architect. I put him in the marketing videos. That's Eilina. She was our Unreal Engine specialist, a master of game design from Breda University. Made her be a model in my marketing videos. And we built this beautiful showroom because I thought that the showroom would buy me enough cover from the senior executives of Philips that they would see it, they would love it, they would believe it, and they would give me some budget. Again, like intern, one sales guy who I could hire full-time, intern. That's how I had to build this, right? And then we were trying to do some cool technologies. And one of the benefits to me of hiring all these young interns is they came with the coolest new tech, right? They knew how to do, in the architecture world, CNC fabrication, parametric design, Unreal Engine, which like, there was no skills in the more senior folks in the company. So I had all the cutting edge stuff for dirt cheap, right? And I got earned media and wallpaper in Milan. And we were even getting traction of like, this was a $275,000 order for a W hotel lobby in Oman, which was like, bingo, this is exactly the whole business case, and that's great. Well, this is Eric Rondelot. He's the CEO of Philips Lighting. Now it's called Signify. So that's a Fortune 500 CEO standing in my basement showroom. How did I get him in my basement showroom? Well, I used to sit in this open office area with his corporate assistant, who was this wonderful, but a total pit bull of a gatekeeper. I just was friendly with her. Over the years, I got to know her, and I said, hey, could you ever get me 20 minutes for him? And she's like, oh, sure, we'll get you. Sure enough, she got me 20 minutes for him to come in. And look at, I mean, he loved it. He was like, this is amazing. He literally got on the phone right away, and I thought he was a bit rude. I'm like, come on, can't you give me 5 minutes in my own showroom? He was calling a salesperson in London saying, oh my God, you got to get this in like some department store he was just talking about. So I got the CEO. This is like, if you're at Disney, this is like Bob Iger in your basement showroom saying how amazing this is so cool, this is the future. But you know what, between Eric and me, there was 2 layers of idiot corporate managers, including a chief innovation officer who was completely out of her depth, and then a corporate venture manager they brought in who literally looked like a character from a Glengarry Glen Ross? He looks like a used car dealer with slick back hair, double-breasted blue suits with the gold buttons, and he's managing lighting ventures. Like, he had no clue. He came from telecom, and he knew nothing about interior design, architecture, hospitality. He knew nothing about that world. He literally told me after I put together a very real budget, oh, I'm going to keep my options open like a New Jersey hood. I'm going to give you half of this. Like, he just cut my budget in half arbitrarily, all right? That's the reality of it. Like, you can push that far and you still, you know, after 4 years, I gave up. I walked away from my own venture because you can push that brick wall for so long and bash your head against it. But if the organization is just never going to come around, even if you won the CEO, even if you've done everything right, at some point you just have to cut your losses and move on, right? Now, sadly, this was the right trend. There was another company in LA that started this up that went on to 100 million in revenue that was acquired by a big Armstrong Ceilings. And this is now all over the world, so I was right. So the whole trend was right. This was just a missed opportunity from the company. But the thing that I'm proudest of is that, you know, I had to, as a venture manager, I had to pitch everyone. I had nothing. I could not offer them full-time jobs. I could not offer them money or bonuses or whatever. So I just had to inspire these people to join my renegade pirate band in the basement here, all right? And they all did. Like, they, you know, he left his sales job to join us. He left his sales job to join us. She did too, you know, intern. They've all gone on to good careers. They're all very happy about it. And, you know, this motivated them. This really, from a business point of view, they were highly, highly motivated. They were so energized to do this. And they still, like, I felt bad for Patrick because he left. And after the venture shut down, he had to leave the company. But I talked to him later. He says, hey, that's the best thing ever because I started my own company after this. Like, you so inspired me to do this. He's like totally out of sales and lighting and all that. It's doing something else. But so, you know, it does add up. You know, all of this sort of the abstract slides I start with kind of end up at that. So, you know, you get these days and you get these days. So you could take pride in your work, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. But you have to be very realistic. So now when I say the skull and crossbones, I said avoid these. You know, that's what happens. You know. So, guys, thoughts? Questions? But this, you know, this is, everybody in a company can do this. And just slow little improvements, constantly accrued, is like interest on your bank account. You wake up one day, wow, I got a lot of money, right? And the opposite is really destructive too. Like when people refuse to acknowledge waste, they don't want to know why, they throw crazy projects around, they have nobody responsible for it, you know. They have no tools, and they don't understand why some people are against them or not aligned with them, or they don't know how to use certain people, right? And they have no process except like write the spec and throw it into the roadmap. Tell the sales team, here's the roadmap, and they're going to start selling stuff like crazy before it's even going, right? So there's a lot of sins that you do is like the dark side of this, you know.